Hi, I'm Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net and you're listening to Album Deep Dives. In this episode, we'll explore the work of the legendary guitarist Freddie Green by analyzing his musical composition style on his only record as a leader, actually, that is Mr. Rhythm in 1955. Welcome to Jazz Guitar Lessons, where we help guitarists learn jazz faster, express themselves more fluently, and have fun along the way. My name is Mark, and if you're looking to learn jazz, form better practice habits, and especially if you enjoy a French accent, make sure to subscribe. To start our explorations, let's get to know his history a bit better. Frederick William Green was born in Charleston, South Carolina on March 31st, 1911. Before his teenage years, he picked up the banjo to start off his musical journey, and shortly after, during his early teens, he was forced to move to New York with his aunt to finish his schooling after both his parents passed away. So he began playing clubs around New York, and in 1937, Freddie, while playing with the Nighthawks at the Black Cat Club, the jazz talent scout John Hammond noticed him and introduced him to the legendary jazz pianist and band leader Count Basie. The rest is history, as they say. So Freddie Green recorded his first tracks with Count Basie and the orchestra for Decca Records on March 26, 1937, and then he would continue playing and recording with Count Basie's bands throughout his entire life. Apart from his extensive discography with Count Basie, Freddie Green played and recorded with Sonny Stitt, Buddy Rich, Coleman Hawkins, Sarah Vaughan, and amongst many other renowned artists. In 1945, Freddie recorded a few tracks as a leader for the first time under the name of Freddie Green and his Kansas City Seven. And in 1955, Freddie recorded his sole record as a leader, Mr. Rhythm, which is what we'll talk about today. The personnel on this record is comprised of Milt Hinton on double bass, Joe Jones on drums, Nat Pierce on piano, Al Cohn on tenor sax and clarinet, Henry Coker on trombone, Joe Newman on trumpet, and of course Freddie Green on guitar. Freddie is famously known for his rhythm guitar playing, always being a driving and steady force that glued the rhythm section together. Unfortunately, his guitar is very poorly recorded in virtually every album that he participated in, and that's probably because he played acoustic as well. So Freddie was a big advocate of acoustic archtop guitars, and he virtually never played an electric guitar or, used any kind of amplification. Because the recording technology at the time was not very advanced, his guitar can barely be heard over the rest of the group, making it extremely hard to get to truly analyze his technique and rhythm guitar playing approach. Apart from this, he didn't solo almost at all, so this is why we'll be going through a slightly different direction in this episode. Freddie has a superb control over the jazz vocabulary and a deep knowledge of harmony, and to illustrate this, we will analyze two of his great compositions featured on the album Mr. Rhythm. And be sure to download the transcript of this episode so that you can really follow along to the sheet music and musical examples as we go. To begin, we'll analyze the second track on the album titled Down for Double. This is a clever composition because of how the phrases are structured and the different techniques that Freddie used to create interest in that tune with a very basic harmony and lots of repetition. Let's listen to the head of the tune now to familiarize ourselves with the track. So let's get to it. I mentioned earlier that this tune has a pretty basic harmony because it's all pretty diatonic to the key of B flat. The form of the tune is a standard AABA with an added intro. If you're not familiar with this nomenclature, don't worry, it's pretty simple. We use a letter to title each section of the tune, starting with the first letter of the alphabet, of course, and in this case, the tune repeats the first 8 bars after the intro, so it makes it for 2 A sections. So we say AA, right? And then the tune goes to a bridge or a B, and it's just a good coincidence, we'll label it B. And finally, the tune comes back to the first section, and that's our last A, hence AABA. For the A sections, Freddie made use of secondary dominants to modify the traditional 1-6-2-5 cycle, and those are Roman numbers, of course, and this results in all the chords being dominants, except for our tonic, the one chord, the B flat. So the progression goes 1-6-2-5, and all the chords are 7s except the 1, and that's B flat, G7, C7, F7, and so on. The harmony of the bridge, or the B section, is slightly different. Here, the tonic chord changes its quality to dominant and becomes a secondary dominant, leading to E flat, meaning the first chord of the B section is actually B flat 7, so it's a dominant chord. And this movement is then transposed up a tone, giving us C7 to F7. So the chords to the bridge are B flat 7, E flat 7, then C7, F7. And this leads perfectly back to the starting point right after the F7, back to the B flat chord for the last A section of the tune. Now that we understand the harmony of the tune, let's turn to what I find to be the most interesting aspect of the composition, the melodic structure. There are 2 main elements that I would like to point your attention to regarding the melodic structure of the tune. The first one has to do with pillar number 2 of improv, as you can find on the blog on jazzguitarlessons.net, that is connecting chords or harmony logically. Let's take a look at the main motif of the melody in the A section. If you notice, the melody is delineating or outlining the harmony perfectly by making use of guide tones. Simply put, guide tones are the notes that define the quality of the chord. So the 3rd and the 7th, mostly, we call them guide tone or shell chords or whatever. For this motif, the flat 7 of the G7 chord is played on beat 4 of the first bar. Let me repeat this. The flat 7 of G7, that's the F note, is played on beat 4 of the first bar, and this falls down to the 3rd of the C7, played on the first beat of the next bar, and that note is E. So basically we get an F note to an E, so it's a half-step motion down, and consequently, after a brief passing tone to the 3rd of C, the 3rd of C will fall to the flat 7 of the following chord as well. So we have an E natural falling down to an E flat, and that E flat is the flat 7 of F7. And finally, the flat 7 of F will fall to the 3rd of B flat, that is a D natural note, although it's played an octave up. You can see this in the diagram. And of course, now we're getting this motion of an F to an E natural to an E flat to a D. And let's just let's listen and put your eyes on the sheet music and try to follow along with the example. Let's listen again. Just for it to be extra clear, let's listen one more time. Now, the second important element I want to highlight as far as melody has to do with the 3rd pillar of improv, as you can find on the blog, the jazzguitarlessons.net blog, that is articulating your lines or phrasing, in other words. If we take a look at the bigger picture, there's a distinct difference between the phrasing of the A sections and the one found in the B sections. During the A sections of the tune, there is really one 2-bar melodic phrase that's repeated 3 times with slight modifications as the melody evolves. So it's motivic development, if you wish. These modifications are mainly rhythmic, and it's very interesting to notice how only the first half of the phrase is changing. Freddie decided to build tension by leaving more space at the start of each repetition. And the first time we hear the melody, there's a string of 8 notes, and the second time, there's only 2 syncopated 8 notes. And the third time, There's just one eighth note. So it's like we're playing a removing game, right? Let's listen and again try to follow along with that written example. All right, now let's look at the bridge or B section. In contrast with the A section, the phrasing of this melody is not a small 2-bar cell. As opposed to repeating the same phrase like in the A section, the melody in the bridge is very much based in a call and response pattern. The first bar serves as the calling, quote unquote, and then building the tension by going up and hanging there for a beat. And then the next 3 bars of the melody serve as the response, quote unquote, by imitating the phrase of the first bar, but immediately resolving it in a purely downward motion, of course with some passing tones. Then the phrase is transposed almost identically up a tone, so 2 half steps. And then furthermore, it is interesting to notice that the harmonic rhythm is also changed. In the A section, we had 2 chords per bar, so 2 beats each, while the B section, it just drastically shifted the harmonic rhythm of having only 1 chord every 2 bars. So A section had a chord every 2 beats, and the B section has a chord every 8 beats. So all these differences in phrasing are really not a coincidence. Freddie Green masterfully used these techniques to create interest and highlight the tension built by the new section, the bridge, the B section, then to resolve it again with the last repetition of A section. This contrast in phrasing between the A sections and the B section or the bridge was masterfully exploited by Freddie. And the way the melody is built creates so much interest by manipulating tension and release, and speaks greatly of the deep understanding that Freddie Green had for the melodic jazz vocabulary, even though he just basically played chords behind everybody. But now let's move on. Let's analyze a third tune on the album. It's called Back and Forth. This tune again exploits the contrast between the different sections, but in a very different way. This tune again is AABA format, but this time the harmony of the tune is a bit more complex, contrasting between the A sections and the B section, but more interestingly, greatly contrasting between the 2 phrases found in the A section alone. So let's listen to the whole melody of this tune to get ourselves familiarized with it. The A section starts with 4 bars of back and forth motion between D7 and E flat 7, so 2 dominant chords. And this can be classified as, if you want, non-functional harmony, or, sounds like a monk tune if you wish. And all that, it means that the chords in the section don't really follow the usual tension resolution and the rules that create harmonic patterns such as 2-5-1 cadences, cycle of fourths, etc. This sets a very static tone, and it builds a lot of tension and anticipation for what's coming next, right? So in the second half of the A section, Freddie decided to release that tension and created this static harmonic motion by making use of traditional functional harmony in the key of E flat major. The harmony in this final 4-bar phrases of the A section is somewhat complex, but very common to the jazz idiom, making use of some diminished passing tone and chord substitutions in order to create extremely smooth voice leading. If you're curious about how diminished passing tone works, check out the blog post on jazzcharleston.net, of course, and for now, let's just listen to the A section of the tune a couple of times to get a better understanding of the harmonic contrast. Let's delve deeper into the melodic resources Freddie used in the tune. As opposed to the previous tune we analyzed, Freddie is not following any guide tones, lines, or even using chord tones to structure the melody of the A sections. It is interesting to notice that Freddie decided to emphasize an extension for the first 4 bars of the melody. If we pay attention to which note is always played on the strong beats, in fact, it's on the first beat of every new chord, we will discover that it is the 13th of the chord. For example, that B that is anticipated as a first note, as syncopated in the first bar of the melody, that B natural is the 13th of D7. And then on beat 3, right when the chord changes to E flat 7, the melody goes to a C natural, which is, again, the C natural is the 13th of the E flat 7 chord. There are some rhythmic variations to create interest, of course, but almost every time, the 13th of the chord is played anticipated and right on the strong beats. In the following 4 bars, Freddie makes use of common tones between the chords, as well as a great rhythmic motif to create interest and excitement. Only 2 notes are played for the first 2 bars of this phrase, that is E flat and C natural. And these 2 notes are shared between the chord scales of the 3 chords found in these 2 bars, which allow the repetition of E flat and C notes to have different colors throughout the phrase. Furthermore, Freddie decided to make this feature even more interesting by using a 3 against 4 type of rhythm motif. If you're not familiar with this type of rhythm, it's simply juxtaposing a phrase that is grouped in 3 against another phrase that is grouped in 4. So in this example, the rhythm section is playing 4/4 swing rhythm, that's our phrase grouped in 4, while the melody is playing a phrase grouped in 3/8 notes. And this results in an energetic and interesting melody that will get resolved in the last bar of the A section by returning to our 4/4 time grouping of 4/8 notes. So it's like the phrase in 3 is like shifting around against a pulse of 4. I'd like to point out that all this melodic and harmonic contrast and richness is found in a short 8-bar section, which speaks greatly of what an interesting and dynamic composer Freddie was, and again, showcases his deep knowledge of the jazz idiom. If you're interested in learning more about Freddie Green's playing and technique, I would strongly encourage you to check out this website. It's www.freddiegreen.org. And it's a great resource for whoever's looking to learn more about Freddie. It has great indexes for articles, technique books, and biographical information, and a vast transcription archive where you can check out interesting research done to figure out, what Freddie's technique was. And it's kind of a mystery due to how buried his guitar is on most of the recorded material. So also you might be interested in checking out some of the recording where his guitar is more audible. Some of these are April in Paris by Count Basie, Autumn in Paris, also by Count Basie, and Brother John Sellers Sing Blues and Folk Songs by Brother Joe Sellers. And of course, that's one of the greatest records. Just to point out, that's off the script. I have heard that Freddie would get in a room and really sit down with his archtop and orient the guitar for maximum acoustic impact in the room, and that it really filled the band. So people in the band would say when he was missing, the rhythm was kind of odd, because I guess he found a way to put the sound out in a room with his fingers and guitar, but that was never really truly captured on recordings. So that's Mark's side note about Freddie Green. All right, so thanks for listening to this episode of Album Deep Dives. I hope you've enjoyed it and that you took something useful out of your out of this compositional analysis we did. Freddie Green is such an immense figure in the jazz guitar world, and although we don't discuss his rhythm guitar playing, because that's what everybody does, and that's what he's most known for, I hope that looking at him through a different lens has shed some light on his less featured talents.